Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
When I say the word resilience, what is something that comes to your mind? Are you thinking about how you can endure the pain? Are you thinking about what is necessary to make it through? Or are you thinking about, I don't got what he just said. What is resilience? So when we try to define resilience, we are left with multiple meanings. Resilience can mean we're able to fight when the fight might be not into our favor. Or resilient might be that we are going to get back up even if we get knocked down. Or resilience might be we're going to keep on trying to win even if losing seems to be the only option at the time. There are going to be many negative sides to what the mind is going to say. But resilience is not only about losing. Resilience is about staying in the fight until we win. We think of movies like Rocky. Rocky was resilient. He fought for this idea of a victory, of course, right? Because we all want that goal. But he also stayed in the fight because he knew if he gave up on that fight, his life would be over. In the sense of, I am going to have a harder time getting back up when I get knocked down. And I can think about so many times when people get knocked down in life, whether it be because they lose a job or they lose a relationship or they fall into unnecessary habits like drinking and drugs and hanging around with the wrong people. All of these things might cause you to have a weakened mindset, but there is a way for you to develop resilience at a very young age. And so I wrote this article here, Raising Resilient Youth, the mentorship secrets schools don't teach. Looking at this article, there's talking about how schools are great at, teaching this idea of content, right? So I'm going to teach you all this content in school. I'm going to teach you math. I'm going to teach you reading, how to write essays, and all of these things that schools teach, right? But then again, if we take maybe a high schooler or maybe someone in college starting off, we can find that there's many gaps in their education still. This is not to say that we need to get rid of school or we need to do a complete overhaul on what school is in the education system. Of course, there would be benefits to that, but then, of course, there's going to be many difficulties in that as well. With that being said, we have to look at what would be resilient training or resilience training for our youth, because we can look at what's happening to our youth today in the real world when they leave the shelters of high school, so from elementary all the way to high school, it is shelter, right? Those walls shelter those children, right? They're protected to a degree. But then once they go off to college, in a sense, they might be protected, but not as much as elementary and high school, right? There's a lot much more freedom in college than there are going to be in the primary school K to 12 years. So resilience is going to be built on a child's opportunity to fail. It's going to be built on a child's or a teen's opportunity to explore. When we start to look at all of these different things and possibilities that these young minds can be embarking on, we can see what can be coming their way and we can prepare them for it. For example, schools might not teach you how to manage anxiety, but yet anxiety runs so high in our world today with our adults. This is not to say that our children are not anxious or that our children are not going to be stressed. I can't tell you how many times I was stressed for a test that I didn't study for the night before or the day of or whatever, because I didn't want to study, right? I wasn't interested in school. But then again, I still had the fear for it. And so there's just a disliking for tests. I was still resilient. I still made my way through. And then I had to be resilient when I got the punishment, when I brought back my F, to my parents. So this was, something that I had to learn a way that is not necessarily beneficial for many of our young minds today, because we can teach them how to succeed. And then we can also teach them how to fail properly. Not preparing for a test is failing improperly, right? That was not good on my part. But if we did the training, right? If we did the work, and we said, hey, I'm going to study for this test. And if we fail, what we do after that failure says everything. Because it's not to say that I studied, I must be dumb, right? I studied and I still failed. There's all this negative that can come in the way to our resilient minds and training. What we have to do instead from those young ages is that we have to just give ourselves the alternative. I might have failed today, but it doesn't mean I'll fail tomorrow. Or it doesn't mean I'll fail on the next test. Heck, you might have a track record of failing your test. You might have a track record of failing your first test, your second test, your third test, your fourth test, all the way to your finals, right? But then maybe somewhere there's a beacon of light where you pass a test. That could be the testament of everything that you can become, right? You are not the failures that you received, right? Whether because of lack of studying and proper teaching from the teacher, or maybe just no interest in the subject or school. All of these can be factors to why someone might not be rising to the challenge of passing a standardized test. So we know that in life, right? Life is going to give us many tests, right? School might just be a clever way of giving us tests to test our education, our content, and to kind of bring that into our adult life where life tests us every single day. There's something that goes on and it's going to test us. Some people are going to be resilient to the negatives of the results of the test, right? Maybe in life you're not winning. Maybe you're trying to find a job and you just can't. Maybe you are trying to find a relationship and nothing is working. Maybe you're, trying to get ahead on a project and it seems like everything you do or everything that's happening is almost like a setback. One of the things that is going to creep in your mind is like, why even bother? This is going to be the poison of what resilience is. We don't want that thought in our head. We don't want, why bother? Why do I have to continue to do this, right? We do it because we know it's going to build resilience, right? Going to the gym might not feel good on day one. It might not feel good on day 100 or year 100, whatever it be, but you do it because you understand it builds something within you. What is that? When we look at youth, for example, there's going to be ways that you can build resilience within them. I think of my children, right? My children are still young. The resilience training already has begun. If they fall, I say get back up. If they are going to jump off the sofa, I say have fun. I don't say be careful. If they are doing something dangerous, I'm going to say, okay, what did you learn there? Right? They might learn the limitations, right? But then I'm going to say, what if we did it a different way? What if we did this instead of what you did? Could we do the same thing, but get the result that you were looking for? Maybe to have fun, maybe to spin faster, maybe to get higher, whatever it be, right? Whatever the result was, it happened because I helped guide them, right? Mentorship is not only about, hey, I'm a coach, you need me as a mentor. Mentorship can be given from any walk of life, from any person, right? Mentorship can be from a tutor. It could be from the janitor at school. It could be from an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a family member, right? Family friend, whatever it be. You can learn from someone. Those people can be your mentors. I can't tell you how many mentors I've had growing up where they would instill a bit of wisdom. It wasn't an autobiography, it wasn't a book or anything. It was just a snippet, a story. It helped share and influence my perspective because I can say life can be so hard, right? Life can be so tough. Why me? Boo hoo. I can come in with all the sob stories of not being strong or not being adequate. But then I said, you know what? If I'm not adequate today, what's stopping me from being adequate tomorrow? If I'm not strong today, what's stopping me from not being strong tomorrow? Resilience is built on this idea of it might not be today, but what's stopping me from tomorrow? So I think of like when you're learning a skill, right? It could be any skill. I'm going to use martial arts as an example. When you start day one of martial arts, you're typically a white belt. Maybe you're just doing the introductory type of class and you're no belt, right? You're just a person that's going to try things out. Still white belt. This idea, you're just a nobody or you're a white belt. And the white belt signifies something, right? It signifies that you are going to be climbing the ranks. Maybe one day you'll be a black belt. You have to understand what each level means. If you are a blue belt, you should be able to beat a white belt. If you're a purple belt, you should be able to beat a white belt, right? Things along those lines. Now, of course, I know there's people who are like black belts and they'll pretend to be a white belt or something along those lines. They'll kind of go into a new dojo and beat up all the, elite guys in there to kind of prove a point that just because you think you have risen to this height, it doesn't give you the playground to take it easy. Resilience is not built on complacency and comfort. It's built on effort and maybe even some struggle. So when I'm struggling in martial arts or the gym or work or whatever it be, there's a difference between good struggle and bad struggle. If I'm spinning the wheels, right? If I'm just kind of not moving and I'm hitting the gas and nothing's happening, I need to pivot. I need to make some changes very quickly. But if I'm just kind of taking the punches and saying, oh, I guess I'm a punching bag, then something is wrong. I need to figure something out because we can raise people to be punching bags, right? How many people do that are punching bags who just keep taking the hits and they just say, hey, this is life. But that is not what resilience should be for you. You shouldn't be resilient to the negativities of what others are giving you or what the world is giving you or what you're allotted. Resilience is saying, I'm going to keep on trying to get what I think I want. Because you might not have done the work to know what you truly want yet, but at least you can give yourself this belief that you want. So we start walking, maybe not with 100% confidence, but we walk with 100% curiosity. What is behind the corner? What is behind the door? So when we're raising children, they're extremely curious. Just the other day, my kid was trying to open the cabinet. I'm like, why are you opening the cabinet? He's like, sorry, Dad. I'm like, well, no, you don't gotta be sorry, but like, why are you opening the cabinet? Like, are you curious to, what's behind that door? Children are just naturally curious. They want to know everything. They want to touch everything. They are going to ask questions. They're going to ask why? Well, you have to be able to answer that. Then you have to be able to support their growth because there's going to be times when they fall and maybe you want to pick them up. Do you? There's going to be times when they cry and they yell. What do? Do you give them a hug and say it's going to be okay? Or do you say, what's wrong? Let's figure this out together. There's going to be ways that you can be a passive parent or you can be a parent that is fully involved in their child's life. This is not to say that there's one right or wrong way to raise children. But when we're trying to raise resilient children, we have to allow them to go through those moments of pain. Think back of our group 2 episode where one of the coaches, he was talking about how his son failed, or it was him when he had lost the game. And the dad was, driving and the mom wanted to say something. The mom was like, baby, it's going to be okay. Like, it's okay to lose. And the dad said, don't talk to the boy. Dad said, let him go through it. Let him figure it out. Now, resilience is not only about figuring things out by yourself. It's not all about going in the corner, going in to your room and figuring out what you did wrong, right? That's not what resilience is all the time. There's going to be times when you have to have this applied theory to what resilience is, and that's when you do your self-education work, right? But it's more so of there's guided resilience and then there's resilience that you have to navigate through. Because when you go to school, the curriculum is going to be teaching you how to do something, whether it be addition, right? So you learn what 2 plus 2, you learn what 3 plus 5 is, but you're not necessarily learning what 3 plus 5 is and what 5 plus 3 is. You're understanding what the addition sign means into the equation. You have 5 objects and you're going to add 3 objects to them, or vice versa, 3 objects and you're going to add 5 things to it. The addition sign is the problem, right? So we know now the problem and we just have to figure out the solution. So it doesn't matter what number it is. It could be 102 plus 79. We know that the problem is an addition problem. Now, if we have a subtraction problem, now we know that there's a subtraction problem. If we know there's a multiplication problem, we know that there's a multiplication and division, same thing, right? All of these things help us understand what is the problem and how to figure out the solution. Because if I just say, hey, here's a bunch of problems, and I don't give you any signs of addition or subtraction or multiplication, you either have to kind of make something up on your own, or you have to say, hey, these problems have, no indication of, what is asking for. This is not like, talking about like questions, right? It's just talking about what life is. Because life is going to give you a series of numbers. It's going to give you a series of problems. And sometimes it's going to be adding, and sometimes it's going to be subtraction. Sometimes you might be multiplying your money, and sometimes you might be dividing it, right? We have a good side and a bad side. The idea is no matter what, we are going to be confident in our abilities, because if we do it enough, eventually we develop a confidence, right? If I ask any adult, can you add? Most of adults are going to say yes. It might take them some time and it might take them a couple of fingers, but they can do it. Same thing with subtraction. Multiplication and division, might be a hit or miss with our world today and, all of our technologies and our smartphones and things like that. Because one of the things that will happen with our youth today is that they can't shy away from technology because they will always have a phone typically in their pocket, right? So they can go to a calculator. So they don't have to do that. They can ask Google for the answer. So there's going to be a lot of conflict into what they're learning in their days. Because at one point you can say, I have to learn this because I'm not going to have access to tools like calculators at every single moment of my day. So since we know that that is no longer a possibility, right? Because we have access to calculators at almost any time of our day, whether it be on our computers or whether it be on our smartphones. So we have to be deliberate in why we're doing something, why we're trying to enhance our skills, why we're trying to be resilient in this fight. I remember my mom, she said something. This is back when we had the Texas freeze and all these people were like going into garages in their cars and they were starting their cars and they were dying because of carbon monoxide poisoning because they didn't realize that they had to open up the garage door if they wanted to have their car on. Now, of course, we have Teslas, you can do that, but those people just didn't know any better. They didn't grow up in a place where they had to figure out how to stay warm or they had to figure out how to survive or where to get their meal from. Most people don't know how to garden. They don't know how to grow. They don't know how to butcher a chicken or a cow or something along those lines. Not to say that you have to go out today after listening to this podcast and start to learn all these skills. It's not to say that you need to learn how to fight. You need to learn how to defend yourself and all, all of these are nice things to have. Like these skills could be nice things to have if you ever need them. But most people won't ever have to raise a finger. Most people won't have to ever clench a fist. Most people will never have to plant a seed because our world today has enhanced our living capabilities to not need some of the foundational works that our predecessors or our ancestors needed in order to live and survive. So our survival today is very different than those of the past. And so our children's survival is going to be very different than what we had growing up or what our parents had growing up or what our great grandparents growing up. We can go all the way down the line. It's very different. So knowing this, right, we have to prepare them for what is going to be coming into their world. So technology is going to be a big one, right? Raising them to be resilient with technology and cyberbullying, right? Because bullying was once a 7 to 2 endeavor, right? You go to school from 7 to 2 or 7 to 3, whatever it was. Once school was over, you would get a reprieve. But now today, you go to school, get bullied, and you come home and you get bullied. There's a never ending stream of bullying. Can a child truly become resilient with a constant barrage of that? It's going to be difficult. It's going to be more difficult than what we had growing up. But it doesn't mean that they can't not win, right? It doesn't mean that they cannot be strong or they cannot not be confident. They can do the work to be strong. One of the things that you should be giving them is positive role models in their life. Now, I talk about this idea of mentorship because mentorship is going to be helping your child or helping the children of the world or the young teens or the young adults of the world fill in the gaps of where they're not strong. It's going to be helping them fill in the gaps where they might be looking at something, but they're too afraid to take action. The mentor is going to not only help them take the action, but is going to be there to catch them if they ever fall. I think of this idea of we're not there to belittle someone's actions, or we're not there to tell someone what not to do. We're there to support, we're there to be cheerleaders, we're there to comfort, maybe even if things don't go the way of, of how the person would have liked. But we're also going to allow the person to feel what it feels to that loss, feels what it feels to have that success. And I think of when people they had this idea of winning and losing. I think it's so important that someone experiences winning and losing in order to build resilience. So this is why putting your children in sports or some type of activity where there's a clear winner or there's a clear loser, right? There's no participation trophies in life. We have to be able to define if we were able to win or if we were able to lose. Then we amplify what that is to our days. Did we win today or did we lose today? You get to define what winning and losing is, of course, but when you're resilient, that loss is not going to make you detest to trying again the next day. I understand there's some people who lose, who try something and they say, oh, it won't work. Like I went up to the girl and she rejected me. I'm never going up to another girl again. So what are you going to forego your family life? Are you going to forego finding someone to spend your life with? All of these things are built on resilience. If you can get resilience in at a very young age, it can just be strengthened as you grow older in age. So, what we give teens as resilience is different than what we give adults as resilience, of course, right? As long as they have a consistent stream of enhancing themselves, of having opportunities to be resilient and to coming out on the other side rather than just being helpless to whatever comes their way, is going to be a game changer for many of our youth today. This is why this article is so important. Raising Resilient Youth, the Mentorship Secrets Schools Don't Teach. This article is going to be helping you understand how you can implement these different strategies to help your child manage anxiety, build confidence, deal with failures, and then develop a strong sense of self. All of these things are going to be a given to the majority of people in life, but it's going to be something that you have to be deliberate in doing the work for. Because if I say, hey, you don't have to be anxious, you don't have to be confident, right? I'll take care of everything for you, right? That doesn't build resilience, that builds more dependence. So, in a sense, we are building children to be independent from us and hopefully one day being interdependent with us. But before we let them out of the nest, we allow them opportunities to seek mentors, to seek guidance, to get teachers, and then to learn how to find them later in life if the need arises. Not everyone's going to need a life coach. Not everyone's going to need a business coach. Not everyone's going to need a relationship counselor. Those things might not be a necessity for you at any point of your life. But if you do need that type of assistance or that type of help, at least where to go. You can begin with this article here. The link is going to be right down below. You can visit us at revenconcepts.com and you can get the coaching that you need for yourself or for your child. This is all to say that our world today, especially the education system, is not preparing our children to be resilient. So we need to supplement it somehow. Parents, you can do it yourself if you want to do the work. You just can't forego what your children are. You can't forego, the upraising of your children. Because if you are not resilient as a parent, of course, then you're going to have to get the coaching first. Then you're going to have to kind of give that to your child as you progress through the process. And then, of course, you can also get a coach for your child. And then so they can become resilient alongside you. It could be a journey that you take together if you are not resilient yourself. But if you find that your child is not resilient within their endeavors or their schooling, then it is going to be a sure tell sign that you have to take action. Of course, read this article to begin some of the first steps to really drive resilience into your child's mindset today. A mentor is going to be vital and crucial and critical aspect to their development. So ensure that you are equipping them to be prepared for everything that the world may be throwing at them, because the world that we lived in might be already gone and past, but the world that your children are going to be stepping into might be a fight that you wouldn't even fathom having to go through at that age. So give them the tools and give them the resources to come out on the other side with the win.